So should I stand or I don't know with the cameras? You know what? I'll sit and then I'll move. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to BJ. I'm Kobe. I'm the Israel educator at BJ. Before I'm going to introduce our guest, I would like to thank my partners in crime for tonight. The first one is Margaret, the Aviv program manager, and of course SAJ, another synagogue here in the Upper West Side, and the Israel emissary, who is not here tonight because she had another commitment and she had to split herself, Gali, who's also a great partner of BJ and the Upper West Side community at all. Before I'm going to introduce our guest today, I'm going to talk about the topic. So everybody is hearing a lot about what's going on with the judicial revolt or reform, depends which side of the political spectrum you come from in Israel. And one of the communities that will get hurt the most is the LGBTQ community. And in order to shed light on what is happening in Israel and what may be the outcomes, and to hear more about what's happening in Israel's democracy today, I'm proud to have 4 representatives of IGI. IGI is a movement, is an organization that works with LGBTQ youth, and IGI stands for Israel Gay Youth. Without the movement, guys, it's missing a. And so I'm going to pass the mic to our first guest, Ofer, but I'm going to start with Amir, who's going to talk about the Israeli Arabs, LGBTQ. Racheli, who will speak about the Orthodox. Rom, she's the co-CEO of IGI. And Ofer is a former CEO and at the moment a board member at IGI. So thank you guys for joining us. And I'm looking forward to hear you. Thank you.
So, good evening. As Kobe said, I'm Ofer. I'm a board member in IGI, and until a few weeks ago, I was the CEO. Rom is already doing it much better than I. And we're experiencing a very, very interesting week here, because since we arrived, we are talking about what we do in IGI, about the worlds we're combining in IGI, about the communities we're representing and working with, and we're doing it under the context of what Kobe just mentioned about the Israeli politics and the Israeli very complex situation. And I think understanding or projecting to the American jury and to our partners abroad that the reality is complex, and that there are so many voices in the Israeli society and in the Israeli fraction of life is a task that we're very, very pleased to perform here in the States. So what you'll hear today is really gathering a puzzle of those identities, of those communities, of the experiences that are assembling the ability to be an LGBTQ plus person in Israel. As Kobe said, IGI is the largest LGBTQ plus organization in Israel. We work with more than 45,000 students, members, youth and young adults a year. We work in schools, we work in youth clubs, we work with youth groups. We do it nationally, from north to south, from Kiryat Shmona to Eilat. I think we have a very, very strong representation of what IGI does today. So you were already introduced, so I'll just ask you to maybe talk a bit about yourselves, about who you are and where you're coming from. And we'll begin with Racheli.
So first of all, as Ofer said, thank you all for coming. I'm 22, come from a religious family. My dad is Haredik and my mom is Datit Leumit, which is a modern Orthodox, so I come from both worlds. I grew up in Givat Shmuel. Maybe the name of the city sounds familiar to you. A few months ago, I was all over the news. A few parents in the local school found out that there is a trans kid in the school. So because they weren't willing to send their children to there, so they tried to expel the kid from the school. He's only 8 years old, so it's a heartbreaking story. I have two brothers, two younger brothers. They both study in a Haredik school, which is a bit more extreme than the one that I just told you about. Religion has been a huge part of my life since I was born. At home, elementary school, Ulpana, which is a high school for girls. I was also a part of a youth movement called Ezra. So all my friends from there are religious as well. And I think religion is a beautiful thing. I mean, I'm religious myself. But I also think that sometimes when you grow up religious, it's like growing up in a bubble. There are things that you can't talk about them. There are undebatable values. There are questions that cannot be asked, so it's pretty much hard. The LGBTQ issue wasn't part of my, no one talked about it. It doesn't exist in the community I was growing up, and it's still many communities in Israel does not exist. And, well, even if we take a step back, not just LGBTQ issue, basic sexuality, I can tell you that when I was in Ulpana, we had a class named Bet Chinuch u'Mishpacha, which is home education and family. And the class was supposed to talk about female sexuality, but instead of talking about that, they talked about sexuality, but in terms of having family and like raising kids according to halacha, which is important. But I think we missed the basic. So anything that has to do with sexuality, anything that has to do with the LGBTQ world didn't exist. And it was before we had smartphones. Well, the time I was growing up, so we didn't have smartphones. It's not like today you can just Google something. I feel that, does it have a name? Is that a thing? I couldn't do it, so I had no one to talk to about my feelings, thoughts, anything that has to do with my sexuality. Even after I finished Ulpana, after I finished high school, I went to do national service in a secular place, which supposedly gave me the option to explore myself the way I want to. But even then, I couldn't touch the subject because my feelings, everything I felt was denied for years. So only 2 years ago, I had the courage to start exploring myself, and I came out as a bisexual. I also joined IGI 2 years ago, and this is also when I came out to my parents. And well, that was a very hard experience. I remember this evening as a very dark one. And not just metaphorically, it was dark outside. My parents knew that I was going to talk to them about a sensitive subject, but I didn't know what is it. So it was clear that we can't talk about it in a public place. Givat Shmuel is also a very small city, so we couldn't do this, and we couldn't do it at home near my siblings. So we sat in a car. It was dark outside, and when I told them I'm bisexual, they were even shocked to find out that I had relationship with men, because sexuality isn't something that exists in the community. So they were even more shocked to find out that I have feelings for women. So their first responses were like, it's gonna hurt your siblings, Shidu. No one in the family can know about this. It's probably just a phase, which is something that I hear a lot. And well, it was a very difficult situation to be in. It was very hard to process everything. I can say that in some way, well, it's sad to say it, but in some way I'm lucky, because in other places, in other families, sometimes when someone comes out of the closet, the parents send them to a conversion therapy. I mean, I have friends that has to go through this, and it's just sad and difficult to think that, well, in the religious community, when there is a gadol or when there is a rabbi saying that someone can change your kid, it means a lot. It has a lot of power. So it's very hard to think that someone used this position of power to destroy souls, and it's very hard for me to see it for like a close friends or a participant in the group or just anyone from the community. So hearing this and coming out of the closet to my parents and going through all this journey of exploring myself also proved me that coming out of the closet is not the hardest part. Like sometimes not the easiest part, the hardest part, sorry. Like people think like from now on it's gonna be easier, but I think that it's just the first step on the mountain. After that, you have to deal with, well, my parents first denied the fact that I'm bisexual, so when they started to realize that this is real, everything just became harder. And not just with family, it could be when you want to rent an apartment and it's like 2 women, so the responses as well are not so easy. And in general, any support that a regular person would get, that's not something that I'm getting. So this is pretty much sums up my story a little bit.
Hello. Okay. Amir will talk in Arabic and I will translate. Okay. So.
طيب أنا أمير عمري 27 سنة كبرت وسكنت بقلب عكا اللي هي عمليا مدينة مختلطة اللي فيها عرب ويهود. عقبال العيلة اللي هي كانت ساكنة بقرى اللي هي حد عكا والمجال إني أكون ساكن بعكا أعطاني أكتر الإمكانية إني أتقبل وأشوف شغلات اللي هي تاني مختلفة اللي حتى كنت بجان اللي هو جان يهودي اللي أعطاني المجال أشوف شخصيات وانفتاحات تاني ومختلفة.
So my name is Amir. I live in Acre. I have one big brother and one big sister, and most of my family lives in villages around Acre. So I myself grew up in a big city, more or less. So it's a bit of an open-minded area more than the villages around. And I even went to a Jewish preschool.
بس بنفس الوقت كان مهم كتير لأبوي إنه يحكي لنا وياخدنا على قرية إقرت اللي هي قرية فلسطينية مهجرة بال48 اللي إحنا من أصلنا من غاد وأصل أبوي جاي من هاي القرية.
But my father still, it was very important to him that I learn about my history as an Arab and a Palestinian in Israel. And he used to take us during the summers to a village called Ikrit, which is my family used to live there, and tell us about the history of the village and what happened to it in 1948.
ومن هون بيجي انه فيش عندنا موديل لخيكوي ل LGBTQ+ اللي هو عمليا بتذكر حتى مره كنا انا واخوتي قاعدين عم نحضر تلفزيون ووقتها كان في مذيع آسي عازر اكيد بتعرفوه كان يحكي وشغلي وقتها اخوي هيك قال لاختي انه اخ مش راح يكون عندي ولا باي شكل وهذا مش مقبول عندي ولا باي منطقه.
In the society that I grew up in, the Arab society in Israel, there is no place for LGBTQ. There is no role model or people that you can look at. And I remember some very vivid examples about how it felt for my family, what I could pick up. The first memory is me sitting with my brother and sister and watching TV. And Asi Azar, which is an Israeli TV host, was on. And my brother was saying to my sister, this disgusting gay, I wouldn't allow this in my house.
كمان موضوع اللي هيك كان طلع وقتها انه كان شعري طويل ووقتها كمان اخوي طلب مني اني اقص شعري عشان ابين اكثر رجولي من ان شو مبين اكثر وانه الشعر الطويل بيمثل انوثه اكثر من رجولي.
Another example I remember is I had long hair and my brother told me, listen, you can't have this hair, cut it, because you look feminine, too much feminine, and people might think you're gay. And I did cut my hair because I was afraid of my brother.
وحتى كان في لي صاحب اللي هو صاحب كتير قريب كان باين عليه شوي أكتر نسائي وفي وقتها طلب مني أخوي إني أبعد عنه وبالفعل بعدت عنه قريب ل10 سنين وما التقيناش ولا شفته ولا حكيت معه قبل جمعتين التقيت معه اليوم هو عايش ببرلين وبقول إنه بعكا فيش ولا أي إشي لحتى يخليه هو متواجد هنا فإنه هو طلع ترك عكا وراح على برلين.
And another last example I'll give is my brother. I used to have a best friend from Acre, and my brother one day told me, I think he's gay, you can't meet him anymore. Please stop seeing him. And he was my best friend, but I was afraid and I stopped seeing him. I lost contact with him, and I haven't seen him for the last 10 years. And just 2 weeks ago, before we came, I met him for the first time, and today he lives in Berlin, and he's gay. And he told me I live in Berlin because I don't feel like I have a place as an Arab LGBTQ in Acre or in Israel.
فمن هون نقدر نعرف قديش الاشي مركب انه الواحد يطلع من الخزانه من ناحيه العيله للعيله في كتير اهميه والعيله مش عن جد متقبل الموضوع انه الواحد يكون في عندهن LGBTQ بقلب البيت.
So this is why when I thought I was going to come out of the closet, I knew that I need to somehow let go of the thought that I will have a home, that I will have a home or a family. And I started preparing myself for the option that I would be kicked out or I had to live in the street or in the car. I had a financial plan even for myself.
ومن هون كمان بفهم انه اهلي ما كانش في عندهم المعرفه الكامله يعرفوا شو يعني LGBTQ+. يعني كان كل عقلهم وكل تفكيرهم انه يكون بس على الكحول سميم وسكس ومش عن جد انه في شغلات اللي هي بتختلف عن عني وعن اي حدا تاني وانه في كمان مشاعر بتختلف وفي كمان امور تانية بتختلف اللي هي على النظريه تاعت LGBTQ+.
So in the Arab society, LGBTQ means for them sex, alcohol, and drugs, and there is no image of LGBTQ people being just someone who wants to love differently or have actual human feelings, and it could be very cruel. But you have to understand that in the Arab society today, when you come out of the closet, it's not a personal thing. It's something that brings shame on all your family, and family has a lot of power in the Arab society. So once you do this and decide it, it's a matter for all the family and sometimes all the village.
وانا اصلا موضوعي شوي بيختلف وحياتي بتختلف شوي من ناحيه الستوري تبعي لانه بمرحله معينه مرقت اعتداء جنسي صغير بجيل صغير اللي ما كانش في عندي مجال اللي اسال حالي كثير اسئله ووقتها كان في انه هل انا هوم عشان هيك صار معي ولا انا عن جد هيك خلقت وكان في كثير تساؤلات انه هل البقعه نفسها المنيت كانت لها تاثير على شو كوني انا كامير يعني.
My story is a bit even more complex. I went through sexual harassment when I was a kid, since I was 6 years old, and a large part of it was done by a family member. So I kept my sexual orientation a secret, along with the harassment I went through all these years. And I even thought for some time that I might be gay because of the harassment that I went through.
اول بني ادم عمليا حكيت وطلعت بالخزانه عقباله هو كان اخوي كنا بلندن بتذكر لما كنا بلندن انا واخوي التقيت معه كتبت له هيك زي قصه اللي هي كتير 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 كبيره على قصه حياتنا بالركعه كان في غنانه ومعين اللي انا حاطط له اياهن ووقتها كان اخر جمله كتبت له اياها اذا انت بتقبلني عندك بالبيت فانا حاضر واسمع ونحكي على الموضوع واذا انت بتقبلنيش فانا بحمل حالي وبطلع وبرجع على البلاد وهذا الشيء اللي كان.
So the first person I came out to was my brother, surprisingly, the one that I told about earlier I was so afraid of. And we were in London, and I decided to write him a letter, and I told him in this letter about me feeling things for men and also about the harassment I went through. And I finished the letter with a sentence saying, if you accept me, I'll be glad to talk. And if you don't accept me, then my suitcase is ready, and I'll get on a flight and go back. And he read the letter. And my heart was racing. I didn't know how he would react, and I saw a tear coming from his eye, and I was so relieved. And he told me, "Amir, you're my brother, and I won't let you go."
بس الاشي ما كانش هيك مع الاهل. اهلي كان شوي اكتر صعب لانه كان التاثير انه مره واحده لما احنا بنحط اهلنا بمجتمعنا العربي بالسؤال اللي هو كتير تساؤلات على الهويه الجنسيه، فزي اللي بنحط اهلنا بالفرونت ومش مش اريح محل، لانه كله بيحكي مع كله، كله بيسال كله بيتدخل بكله، فكله هيك معرف مع كله، فمش اشي كان اشي من لذيذ مع الاهل.
So coming out to my parents was even an even more complex situation. I remember it was in my birthday, and I told them I was gay, and they decided to wear black for a whole month, and they stopped cooking food. It was like they were grieving on me, and that we couldn't hear music in the house for a whole month. And the house felt like a graveyard, and it was because of me.
وهون اجت سؤال كثير عن اهلي اذا هل انا جاي عشان كل الشغلات اللي صارت معي ولا لا، ووقتها كان التخصص انه كان في واحد من اللي اعتدى علي وانه كانوا العيله، فحسوا اهلي إن بمرحله معينه انه هن السبب، ما كانوش بهداك المحل، ويمكن لليوم بظن انه هن خجبين بس عشان هذا الاشي انا جاي يمكن.
My family had to, once I told them about my harassment, they also had to choose whether they support me and lose a part of the family, which is a very distinctive thing in the Arab society, or they don't support me and stay in touch with the larger family, and they eventually decided to support me. And this means that during holidays, whether it's Christmas or other holidays, then we have dinner alone. And it's a hard price, but they did decide to support me. Thank you, Amir. Thank you for sharing. So I'll introduce myself also. I'm Ram. I'm 31 years old. This is an embarrassing picture of me. I'm a Moroccan Jew, a Mizrahi Jew. My grandparents from both sides came from Morocco. Even my father was born in Morocco. I think my family tree kind of gives a good example about the complexities of being in Israel, in the Israel society today, swinging between very liberal ideas and notions and very conservative ones. So my grandmother from my mother's side, in the middle, the Judaism that I learned from them was a very accepting one, was one with a lot of tradition, but also a lot of humor and a lot of respect for others. While my father's parents, they were put when they came as new olim in a northern city called Kiryat Yam. It's a pretty poor one still today. And their Judaism was inspired more from the Haredi Mizrahi movement, Shas movement. So it was clear to me when I came out that this side of the family, my father's side, cannot know about me and wouldn't accept me, and I can't talk to them about this. But surprisingly, I wasn't the bigger issue because this side of the family, also their interpretation of Judaism led them to renounce my brother's wedding, and he's not gay, it's okay, only me. But he decided to marry someone he met on birthright. She's a New Yorker, and she came to Israel, and she now lives in Israel. But to their perception, she is not Jew. So surprisingly, I wasn't the problematic one. But this is kind of an example of the weird growing gaps where in the same family, one side does not know the other or can't talk about the other, and although she came because of her Jewish feelings to Israel, the same notion that can't accept me, can't accept her as well, as a straight Jewish woman. So this kind of led me during the past year to try and at least acknowledge these gaps and try to bring them a bit closer. And today I live half the week in Tel Aviv and half the week in Afula, which is a city in north of Israel. We have a grandma representative from someone from the Afula community, where we're trying to create an option for LGBTQ light outside of Tel Aviv, which is known as kind of the gay haven where you should be gay in Israel. This is me and a lot of participants or alumni from the Iggy activity are trying to create a different reality outside of Tel Aviv and bring closer these widening gaps.
Thank you, three, for sharing. And I think what you just heard is, as I said, the complexities of trying to bring together through education, through social activity, through our daily life and gatherings, but bringing together so many identities, so many stories that are a part of the Israeli fabric. And Iggy is all about trying to do that. Iggy is about the understanding that those bridges between identities, between communities, could create a better life for ourselves, for the people in Israel, and for the Israeli society at large. And I would like to ask you in this context, how did you get to Iggy? If you could share with us. We'll start with Amir, who will be translated again with Rom will take.
Nice picture.
Yeah.
طيب بال 2018 كان في محاكاة وقت على البندقاوت بقلب تل أبيب وكان في هيك هيتأرجنوت للمحاكاة بحيفا. وقبل التأرجنوت كان في هيك زي حكي على كل التمددات تاعت اللهتاب العرب اللهتاب الكلالي وكان في هيك حكي على كل واحد من طرفه وبعدين زي كان في سؤال انه هي وهو وين العرب ما كانش فيه ولا حدا اللي توجه للعرب ولا حدا حكى للعرب فوقتها انه بلش الاشي غاد وقت وصلوني لواحد الوان اللي هي الوان كولرز بالعربي فوقت وجهوني وبلشت غاد تعرفت على حدا من ايجي وبلشت.
So in 2018, there was a big protest in Israel. The LGBTQ community led it about rights, equal rights and surrogacy. So it became a protest in Tel Aviv and in Haifa. And I went to meet some activists before the protest in Haifa, and they were sitting and talking about the different groups and the protests and what every group inside the LGBTQ community thinks about it or what are their agenda regarding this demonstration. And I felt, and I heard no one talk about this huge group that I am part of, the LGBTQ Arab speakers. And I felt that I couldn't hold myself, and in a moment I said, well, hello, just a minute, with all due respect, you're forgetting a huge group of people from the LGBTQ community with different needs, with different targets and motivations. And so one of the participants was an Iggy volunteer, and he told me, join Iggy. Join the Alwan activity. Alwan in Arabic is colors. So this is how I got acquainted with Iggy.
وكان السؤال اللي هو كان متقرر انه كان نسخه كل سنه بس وحده بعد طلع من الخزانه وكان السؤال انه ايش معقول يصير يعني بعدين هيك فكرت بينه وبين حالي انه اكثر من انه اهلي يلبسوا علي اسود مش رح يصير فبصدر تمام.
بصدر you understood. I started as a facilitator in the Haifa Arab speakers young and youth group. And at first, I was thinking to myself, maybe this is too fast. I was only 1 year outside of the closet, and putting myself in a facilitator's position was a pretty exposed one. And I was afraid of the consequences an Arab Israeli LGBTQ might have to pay. But then I thought to myself, okay, my family already wore black for a month, so what could be worse than that? And I said, okay, let's try it.
وهون عمليا اجت السؤال تبع القوميه تبعت الشخصيه اذا بسال حالي انا عربي فلسطيني بقلب الدائره اللي هي دائره يهوديه كانت دائما هيك السؤال هذا يطرح ويطلع بذات حاله بس بمرحله معينه بايجي عمليا بيعطوا مساحه اللي هي امنه للكل من غير السؤال هذا تبع الهويه اسا اللي هو كثير هالقد مهم فكان تمام انا عربي مع قلب محل اللي هو يهودي بس بالاخر في عنا هدف معين وعنا هدف واحد معين اللي هو الشباب وكل الجيل الجديد تبع ال LGBTQ+.
So the Iggy was one of the first places that I could ask my identity questions in. As an Arab LGBTQ, there are several complex and multiple questions of identity that I had to face with. The first of all was one that every Arab in Israel might face is the question, am I Israeli? Am I Arab? Am I Palestinian? And the second one is about my LGBTQ identity. And it might feel that in the Arab society, I would be discriminated because of my LGBTQ identity, and in the Israeli society, I might be discriminated because I'm Arab. So most of the places there are some Palestinian organizations dealing with LGBTQ that aren't able to make place for both of the complex. They might say, first decide if you're Palestinian or not, and only if you decide you identify politically as Palestinian, then you can ask the LGBTQ question. And I think this is a mistake, because at the end of the day, there are young adults and youth that are looking for a safe place, and this doesn't allow this.
وحتى بتذكر السيمينار الاول تبع ايجي اللي كان فيه هيك شوي غريب، انه بنفع الواحد يكون شو ما بده يكون، يلبس شو ما بده، يتصرف شو ما بده، يحكي كيف ما بده. كان الحكي انه كمان الفيزواليتي الختسونيه تبعتي مش مفروض تكون اسود باسود باسود، كان في عندي المجال لجيفون معين، ولا حتى يكون في عندنا كمان الوان واشكال بقلب السيمينار تبع ايجي. وقت حتى كمان تعرفت على صديقه لإلي اللي هي اليوم عيدان، اللي هي من اقرب الاصدقاء لإلي بقلب الدائره الشخصيه تبعتي، وكله من ورا ايجي.
So I remember arriving at the first IGI seminar for volunteers. The Wi-Fi is not very good. And it was the first time that I felt that I could talk about my Arab identity and LGBTQ identity in Arabic. And I could wear what I want, and I could look however I want. This is something that, as an Arab in Acre, for an example, you can't wear whatever you want. Everyone wears black. All the men wear black. And if I were to come looking like I do, then they would say, they would think I was Jew. This was also the first time that I sat with the Haredi group's facilitators, and I met my best friend, which there is a photo of her, called Idan. She's from a right-wing family, and today we're best friends, and even my family knows her and ask about her. She's the first lesbian they ever knew.
اوكي. ومن هون عمليا اجت هذا بسبب الاهداف التعاون الوان بقلب ايجي، انه يكون في عندنا مساحه امنه للكل، يكون في عندنا حكي بالعربي موجه بالعربي لكل الاجيال ولكل الثقافات المختلفه عندنا بالمجتمع العربي، اللي يعطينا المجال لحتى يكون في مساحه امنه والكل يحس بتمام انه مش فيش شيء عندنا محدد، وكل الكل في محله للكل في ايش يعطي وايش يكون. بس للاسف واحدة من الشغلات اللي هي كتير مهمة عنا بالعيلة، الشغلات اللي بتصير، هو إنه بضل في عنا حالات موت، وبضل في عنا حالات اللي هي خاصة بالعيلة، مثل ما زي ما شايفين هون قصة ساريت أحمد اللي هي انقتلت بس علشان قوميتها لزبت بقلب مجتمع العربي، وهذا الإشي بعده مش متقبل للأسف الشديد.
So this is exactly why there is Alwan groups in IGI, in order for people from folks from the Arab community not to have to decide between both of them identities and not have to leave any one of them behind. And this is an activity that has to be very discreet and keep the security of the people who are coming, because this is a very fragile situation. Just 2 weeks ago, Sarit Ahmed, which was a Druze 18-year-old, was killed by her brother because of her sexual orientation. This is a photo of her. And violence happens a lot around our society today.
وهي بالضبط الاهداف اللي احنا عم نشتغل عليها لحتى نعطي عمليا مساحه اللي هي مساحه ديسكريتد، ويعطوا الامان للكل، ما يكونش في عندنا الامكانيات لحتى يصير في عندنا كمان حالات عن الشكل، ويضل في عنا الحفاظ على البتاخون وعلى الديسكريتو بتاعت البني ادمين اللي بتيجي لعنا، لحتى ما يكون في عنا الشغلات اللي هي بتختلف اكثر وتروح من الشلتاع عنا بتاعتنا.
So this is why most of our activities is inside mixed cities, in order for our participants to feel safe to arrive, and we have security at the place, and to try to prevent things like this from happening, and families from coming to look for their children and trying to get them out of the activity. So
that's it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. So I heard about Iggy through a Facebook group. I'll tell about that soon. Through a Facebook group named LGBTQ Religious Confessions. I rented it by chance, and I mean, I believe it's from Hashem, more accurate to say. And I sent a message to one of the group counselor, and a week after I joined the group, and I clearly remember the day I arrived. First of all, I came with a car, so I could have an escape lane. I drove to Tel Aviv. The group is in Tel Aviv, which is pretty much from the same reasons that Amir just said. I said it also before, growing up religious is growing up in a bubble. So when the group activity is outside those bubbles, it makes the participants feel more safe to come, and it was true also in my case. So I came to Tel Aviv. It was the first time I went to Tel Aviv also, so it was all new to me. And I had a lot of worries. I worried I will meet someone I know in the group. I was worried that maybe the people in the group will not accept me because I'm bisexual. It was the first time I just arrived in a queer space. So it was the first time all the thoughts and feelings that I had all those years turned into actions. And I didn't know how it's gonna feel like. So when I walked in the door, and I know it sounds unreal, but trust me, it is, I just felt safe. I felt the space is safe. I saw that everyone can be who they are there. And I remember the first round, everybody presents themselves, and someone asked me for my pronoun. And it sounds like a small thing, but it was the first time someone asked me a question about my identity that I could answer on without feeling like I'm being judged. So it was a big thing for me. And from week to week, every time I came, I felt like the space is giving me the strength to deal with the outside world, with coming out to my family, with going through all this process of exploring my sexuality. Most of my best friends are from Iggy also today, and honestly, it is a family to me. As you can see in the picture, you can guess which of them is me. So one of the strongest memories I have is we had a Shabbat Atiyot. It's a Shabbat where all the religious groups of Iggy comes together. And we sang Shabbat songs, we did a Kabbalah Shabbat together, we davened together, and it was the first time I saw more than 100 LGBTQ religious background people come together. It was the first time I saw more than 100 examples of the connection between religion and LGBTQ. So it was very special for me. It was a very special experience. And I can say that comparing to that, when I come for a Shabbat in my house, to my family, I have to leave my queer identity outside the door. Like, I can't talk about it, I can't show any signs for it. So it's a gap. But I can say that also in other cases, as I said before, people have to go conversion therapy, and I have a friend that comes from a Haredi background. She grew up Haredi all her life. When she was 18, she reached the age of shidduchim, so she started dating. She knew she's a lesbian, but she decided to get married anyway. After a while, she got divorced. And she had to go through all this just to prove her family and her community that her identity is real. Well, she was hoped that she's not going to be expelled from the community, but it happens anyway. And hearing stories like that and going through everything that I had to go through just proves me that coming to Iggy is something that is so important. This combination of religious and LGBTQ and being in a space that feels safe and feel like I can be who I am is so meaningful. And this is also one of the things that inspired me to become a facilitator myself. I can say that in general, IGI has 4 groups for the Orthodox community and 2 groups for the former Haredi young adults. And I'm a facilitator for the youth group, Youth Orthodox group. So.
I think when you spoke, I thought that there's in the stories there's a battle between light and darkness. I would say you hear about the choice of people to step out to the light, and about the choice, the sad choice sometimes, to remain in the dark. And I think this battle is what the Israeli society is going through in the last few months, like in a volume we have never experienced. And I don't know if you just heard, but a day and a half, everything is the clock is not exactly what it used to be until a few days ago. But a member of Knesset, what's his name, Pindrus, said that the most dangerous thing to the Israeli society or to the Israeli state is the LGBTQ plus, more than ISIS, more than Hamas, more than Iran, and those are the forces, for the first time in the Israeli history, those are the forces that are assembling the government and that are affecting our daily lives. And I wanted to ask Rom, we as a movement, we have stepped into the front of this fight, and I wanted to ask you a bit about that.
So I agree with Ofer. This is certainly one of the most maybe dramatic times for Israel during the last couple of years, maybe since its establishment. And I'll do this. So this elected government is putting IGI and LGBTQs and actually every minority in the Israel society, not only sexual orientation or gender non-conforming minorities, but also racial minorities and ethnical minorities and women in under the direct connection and effect of politicians who have bluntly expressed racist and homophobic ideas. Avi Maoz, one of the current Knesset members, has just received $280 million to overlook educational programs made by organizations, and we are sure that he's looking for us. He didn't just ask for this specific unit inside the Ministry of Education, and he has received these funds, and he was elected. He's part of the Noam party. He was elected exactly because of his anti-LGBTQ thoughts. And this is kind of a violence and public atmosphere that we see its effect on the ground. Okay, so first of all, we see violence. I can show you some of our research centers' information and numbers, and they are troubling. To be a teenager in Israel today, an LGBTQ teenager, means that you're 3 times as more exposed to violence inside your school than your class member, and just because you have a different sexuality or gender definition. And that means 30% or 40%, if it's verbally, you're going to be harassed in the school. And most of these will be done when a teacher or a staff member is there, and they wouldn't just know what to do with this. And if you're a trans kid, then you wouldn't be able to use the bathroom in your school or to go on trips. And we're actually telling these teenagers, by not saying anything, but it's a very clear saying, you might not just go. You can't be here. And they won't come. And then we see this, what's going on when they're young adults. And to add to all this current situation, when we look at our ministers and elected officials, and they say very clearly, listen, you are a threat to Israel more than ISIS, then it's very clear what kind of legitimacy these bullies get, or just any child and teenager in Israel will receive, or parents, or teachers, or rabbis, or whatever. And in the current Israel, instead of making friends with the US Jewry, or kind of thinking about how to create a liberal Judaism, what's going on is our government is making friends with Hungary and with Poland. And we know what happens to sexual minorities in these countries. Today in Poland, there are cities that have a sign, LGBTQ free zone. So we see where this is headed. But we think that this is not only an LGBTQ issue, this is actually a Jewish issue, because if the liberal forces in the world Jewry will not see this is going to end up as a non-Jewish state, or not Jewish as we would say, just like they wouldn't accept my sister-in-law, we're gonna lose the house for all for all the world Jewry, because it's gonna be the house for a very specific kind of Judaism. And this thing goes through the LGBTQ issue, but it affects a much more wider scale. And we see the darkness and the lightning fight, the conservatives and the liberals here. And let me tell you, in Israel, it feels like the conservatives are going to win. If we don't do these connections, if we don't learn from you guys and what's going on here about how Judaism is not something racist, and not something anti-Arab, and not something anti-LGBTQ, but we can create a different kind of Judaism. And I think if the US Jewry would, the liberal parts of Judaism and here would see that this is a fight we need help with. We're 27 weeks now in the streets, and it feels very lonely. It feels hard. It feels hard to remember that we are not the lunatics, that we're doing something okay. But in the Israel atmosphere, we are the weird ones, and our Judaism is not the one that would be comprehended as Judaism. So we are in the forefront of these protests, and we're doing it every week in addition to our activity. And we'll keep on doing it because it's a very personal matter for LGBT. Democracy is a very personal matter for LGBTQs.
Couldn't agree more. I'll just say that Shani is here with us, and she's leading a lot of the protests and work against the craziness of Israel today here in New York. So if you want to join, talk to Shani. I think, like, we've heard a lot about our work. We've heard a lot about the struggles, a lot about the amazing stories and courage you bring to the world. So I want to thank you three so much, and maybe open it to a question or remarks from the amazing people came to listen.
Hi. Yes. Is it working? Okay. Hi. Thank you so much for coming and sharing your stories. I know it's not easy, so I really appreciate that. Welcome to New York City bubble, talking about a bubble. This is a bubble in the United States as well. And I wish the numbers you showed us was only in Israel, but it's actually the same here. And I think that this is a matter that we see that internationally, actually. Definitely, like, I know for myself, I have a sweet spot for Israel, but I want to know, what do you think is like the message that will really resonate to just keep people just going to the street? Like, what would you say is like the most powerful message? Because I actually think that many people here watching what you are doing, because we will need it here maybe sooner than we actually believe so.
Be here.
No, for
in
you
Israel.
guys. Yes, what do you think is the most powerful message?
From
Fighting the darkness.
Yeah, that you think actually working and engaging others.
for the Israelis to hear and have motivation to keep on protesting? Well, I think something like I just said, like the fact that we know that what we see in Israel is not a Jewish thing, might be, or there is other Judaisms who wouldn't think this way and would think that democracy comes along with Judaism, and that a lot of the things coming to Israel are also coming from the U.S., whether it's transphobic books and conventions. We see tons of conventions around here, and even maybe police and how this works. You can see here a photo of Ofer getting arrested in one of the protests, and eggs being thrown. So the fact that we know that we are fighting for something, not only for the LGBTQ community, but when we fight, we also think about what will happen to Israel. Will it be a home for all Jews? Because it's not going to this direction. Would it be a democratic Jewish state, or would it be a different, a non-Jewish state? Might be. So hearing that the liberal there are people who think as we do about Judaism, and that the liberal forces are kind of getting political or getting more involved. They could have had the privilege of not being involved till today. I think in Israel now that every adult has to decide, more or less. It's a breaking point. And whoever is not woken up yet, he needs to wake up, because we can't do it by ourselves. We need to have this back. We need to have someone to say, we're with you, you're right, and invest in the same way that the conservatives invest in the Tikva Foundation and in Kohelet and in translating books, anti-trans books. So we need the same things in Arabic, and we need it in Hebrew, and this would be very important, and it's one of the reasons why we wanted to come. We wanted to say it. We wanted to meet and hear.
I have two very basic and maybe naive sounding questions. First, thank you so much. Very, very moving presentations. One is, who supplied the 280 million, or was it billion, $280 million to counteract, the LGBTQ and any of the other, correct. Who supplied that money?
He is, sorry. Avi Maoz is a member of Knesset, and he is a deputy minister in the government, and he was assigned by the government and the Minister of Education, and by Netanyahu, the Prime Minister, to inspect, to go over the programs that are being held in the schools, and to try to figure out the ways to enhance the Jewish identity of them, which means, in so many words, to look for things that are liberal, to look for things that are open for progress, and to start stopping them. He was quoted saying, "My fight is the fight against progress." He is a person who there is no doubt about what he's looking for. So he was budgeted by the government to do this.
And the government got the money from?
Yeah, from our taxes.
All right, okay, question number two. I mean, it's very, very similar to what's happening here, to what we're feeling here, as you know. Why, not in a kind of an incisive, complex political analysis, but could each of you or any of you speak to why do you personally think this is happening?
Why we think.
Yes, that's what
I'll start maybe by saying that I think obviously there are the personal reasons why the Prime Minister is looking for the very deep change he's looking for in the judicial system. He wants to run away from prison, and he'll be there probably if not. But I think the Israeli politics for the last 3 decades is being torn And I think leaders are using fear and racism and anti-democrat ideas in order to rule. And I think what we see today in the streets is the one of the peaks of this politics. Politics of fear usually brings a nation to be ripped from within, and this is what helps autocrat leaders to rule. And I think this is the global fight between between our forces of progress and the forces that are seeking to rule with those ideas and energies. And this is what we see today also in Israel, and I think we can't avoid understanding that there is also a very big chunk of hatred and fear that is being injected from the what you call the Palestinian Jewish conflict, which is also in our minds, in our biographies, in our inner traumas. So.
I also have, but maybe we'll finish the question, so I won't take all the.
All right, I want to try to maybe eliminate for a minute what's happening now in Israel, because I want to dream and hope that this is just a period of time that's going to disappear. I know it's not going to totally disappear, but I wanted to hear more about IGI activities. Like, how do you, again, maybe before now, I don't know if you're still doing the same thing, but how do you reach out? The religious communities, the Arabs communities. I know in the territories in the West Bank, and that it's even worse for the Arabs, and a lot commit suicide or they kill their family members who come out of the. So what's your programming? How you reach out? How can you address the fears of the fears of life that some of them have?
She's not from Philadelphia. She's first and foremost from Mena Shofet, my kibbutz, and we were organizing here, and then I looked up and I was like, whoa! So thank you for coming, Nama.
Thank you.
So maybe.
היי. טוב, אז אני אדבר בעברית. להגיע לבני נוער בעיקר, היום אנחנו עובדים על כל המדיה שלנו. אנחנו פתחנו עמוד אינסטגרם שהוא נפרד בשם אלואן, שהוא מדבר ומנגיש לכולם, בעיקר בערבית. כל הפרסומים שם בערבית. אין לנו שום פרסום שהוא לא בשפה הערבית. בציפייה ששם אנחנו בעצם מקבלים את הנערים. ברוך השם, אנחנו היום מתחילים לעמוד על נערים בגודל שהוא לא ציפינו שאנחנו נגיע לשם. בהתחלה זה התחיל לפני כמה שנים על נער אחד פה, נער אחד שם. היום אנחנו עומדים כמעט בכל קבוצה ל-30 נער פלוס מינוס.
Yeah, I'll do the English part also. So we're doing we're doing a lot of digital work in Arabic, so that we would be able to reach in the Arab language. Because when a youth, I'll add to what Amir says, when an LGBTQ teenager Arab speaker sees a poster in Hebrew, he would not come to the activity. He needs it to be in his language for him to understand that it's a relevant place for him. So we have an Instagram in Arabic, and all of our posters are in Arabic. And today, from a couple of years ago, we had one teen in every group. Now we have almost 30 in each of our groups. What? Where are you?
In Akko, סליחה, sorry, in חיפה, ג'רוזלם and תל אביב, כי הערים שם הם ערים מעורבות, שבאמת מאפשרות לנו לבצע שם את הפעילות.
So in Tel Aviv, in Haifa, and in Jerusalem, which are cities, big cities that are can allow participants to arrive without any problem. And I could maybe add, for Racheli said that she heard it from a Facebook group, a close Facebook group for the religious community. So this is also kind of a tactic we use. But in general, we would do anything from go into schools to have workshops and leave stickers in the bathroom, or talk to the classroom, knowing that, first of all, of course, we want all of them to be pro-LGBTQ and understand what equality is and kind of lower the amount of violence in the classroom. But we also know that there might be 1 or 2 students in the classroom, they're probably the most vocal ones, anti-LGBTQs, but they would be someone that even hearing or seeing us would give a little rope whenever they decide to contact us. And we have a hotline, we have WhatsApp, and we're on the web, of course. But we do anything from going to schools and just publish our activity. And as offers, we reach, our groups we have 110 groups around Israel, because we want every teenager to have the possibility, a bus drive away, to have a safe space, even if it's for 4 or 5 hours every week. So another part of being here and everywhere and being relevant to everyone, not only in the Orthodox or Arab groups, is being outside of Tel Aviv, being where teens are growing up, because most of the LGBTQs in Israel are not born in Tel Aviv, and it's a good thing, it's okay. So we have to have our activity near their home and relevant.
So that'll be, I guess, the last question. So,
thank you again so much for being here. I resonate a lot with your stories, particularly being bisexual and growing up in the modern Orthodox community. And I know that a lot of times we speak about the suffering and the exclusion, and we build empathy with people who are not in the community to help them support us. But as somebody who's in the community, I want to hear more about your joy and the moments where you feel connected to the intersection of being Jewish and being LGBT, or being Arab and being LGBT. Like, what are the moments that feel powerful for you, that like help you keep going and doing this work?
So this is a great question. I think that, well, I can share a memory and then I'll explain a little bit more. A few months ago, I was part of a seminar of all Iggy's groups. It was on Shabbat, but most of Iggy's groups are secular. It wasn't just for the religious groups. And I came as a facilitator, and I was the only facilitator that kept Shabbat. So I was worried, I didn't know how it's gonna be there. And in the beginning of the Shabbat, a participant from a secular group came to me, and she asked to light a candle. So we did it together. It was a great way to open the Shabbat, especially after I thought I didn't think this is the way I'm gonna start the Shabbat. And when we did a Kiddush, there was another participant that wanted to do a Kiddush because his father is doing it all the time and he never done it myself. So we did it, and everyone just, we sang like a Eshet Chayil ve Shalom Aleichem together. So it was a pretty exciting moment. And after that, we did like a religious queer study, and we had more than 20 participants in the group. So all those moments that coming together, when I experience it, not just in the religious bubble, it strengthens the idea of religion and queer, and how Judaism is something that is much more, it's just much more than what people think. It's something that can bring us all together. So this is kind of like the moments that give me the strength to move on and give me the hope to face all the things we're facing now in Israel. I hope it answers your question.
I will add that we called all of those programs of the religious groups and the religious studies, and we're in the last few years we've been trying to cope with the question of the relationship, the bridge between Judaism and queerness and the LGBTQ identity, and what we called the whole program is celebrating Judaism. We didn't come from it from the struggling, from the pain parts of this daily struggle, but we came from it from the understanding that the connection between the two identities could create a very happy, strong, fun, and safe surroundings. So thank you for the enlightenment. And I think by this optimistic note we'll end, and we'll thank Bnei Yeshurun and Kobi so much for having us, and the Shlichut and Liana for the opportunity. And I thank you again. And I'll say that we're very glad to have these gatherings and to tell our stories and to welcome you to, you have the cards, welcome you to look into our work more, become our partners, support us in any way you think, and have a great night.